Ada, a poor woman from Makoko, saved broke Emeka from thugs, having no idea she was shielding the billionaire owner of Okoro Tech. The moment he revealed his identity changed both their lives forever. You won't believe what happens next, so sit back, relax, and grab your popcorn. If you are new here, don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button to support more inspiring stories like this one.
Dr. Emeka Okoro, the 40-year-old CEO of Okoro Tech and Nigeria's youngest tech billionaire, sat in his penthouse, not on a gilded throne, but nursing a rare, expensive Igbo whiskey. The air was thick with tension, not from a hostile takeover, but from a private, ludicrous wager he had just lost to his rival, Chief Ike. The terms were brutally simple. 7 days of absolute authentic destitution. No credit cards, no contacts, no identifiable assets, only the clothes on his back and 5,000 naira cash, about $10 to start. If he failed, he'd lose his prized collection of vintage Mercedes. Worse, he'd lose face. This wasn't just a challenge. It was Emeka's morbid curiosity about the world his billion shielded him from. "Let's see how the other half breathes," he muttered, peeling off his custom Italian suit. He donned a faded, ill-fitting polo shirt and threadbare trousers he'd bought in a bend-down boutique on a dare years ago. He deliberately smeared dust on his polished leather shoes and roughed up his immaculate beard. He exchanged his Swiss watch for a cheap rubber wristband. By the time the sun dipped low over the lagoon, Emeka Okoro, the magnate, was replaced by broke Emeka, a man anonymous and alone, stepping out of his secured estate's back gate and into the chaotic, pulsating heart of Lagos traffic. His driver, who was in on the bet, merely nodded, ensuring the gate locked behind him. The billionaire had officially vanished, swallowed by the city that had birthed his fortune. He felt a chilling blend of fear and exhilarating freedom. The first challenge was immediate and crushing, finding a place to sleep that wasn't a gutter. His 5,000 naira quickly shrunk after a meager meal of akara and a bottle of warm coke. He tried his hand at manual labor, but his soft CEO hands, used to signing contracts, quickly developed blisters after just an hour of helping a market trader haul sacks of yam. The trader, noticing his weak effort, paid him a paltry sum, barely enough for a shared spot on a wooden plank in a cramped, noisy room with 10 other strangers. The smell of sweat and stale smoke was overwhelming. Emeka realized with a shocking jolt that poverty wasn't a concept, it was a physical, invasive reality. The humiliation was profound. Just yesterday, he chartered a private jet to Abuja. Tonight, he was fighting a cockroach for space on his mat. His initial plan, to observe with a detached sociological eye, shattered. He was in it. He couldn't even use his phone. The charger he carried was for an outdated model, a deliberate part of his disguise. He couldn't call his security detail when a pair of menacing looting men eyed his one bag. He held his breath and played the part of a deeply defeated man, hoping apathy would be his shield. This vulnerability was the scandalous twist he hadn't anticipated. Emeka wasn't just broke, he was powerless. Sleep remained elusive, tormented by the ceaseless noise and the hard, unforgiving floor beneath him. By day 3, the billionaire persona had eroded completely, replaced by a desperate pragmatism. His arrogance, once his defining feature, had been replaced by a quiet humility. He learned to haggle fiercely for a ball of gari and to spot the police patrol routes where petty street vendors were safe from harassment. His suit-wearing habit had made him a target. Now, he walked with a slight slouch and a vacant stare, blending into the background. His initial 5,000 naira was gone, replaced by a meager, hard-earned collection of crumpled naira notes from running errands for a local seamstress. The most humbling moment came when he tried to board a Molue bus. He miscounted the fare, holding up the queue, and the conductor, a large, stern woman, yelled at him, demanding he get off. In his former life, an entire board of directors would have trembled at his voice. Here, he was merely an inconvenience. A young boy behind him sighed and tossed the extra 50 naira to the conductor and whispered, "New to Lagos, abi? Pay attention, man." Emeka, CEO of a company worth billions, had been rescued by a schoolboy. The lesson wasn't just about money. It was about the economy of attention and respect, a currency he no longer held. The experience was profoundly shocking, forcing him to see his privilege not as earned superiority, but as a fortunate accident of birth and business acumen. He spent the rest of the day in a local library, pretending to read, simply to escape the heat and the demands of the street, waiting for the remaining days to tick by.
On the fourth morning, fueled by cheap bread and water, Emeka decided to leverage the only asset his disguise couldn't conceal, his brain. He found a small struggling cyber cafe with ancient computers and convinced the skeptical owner to let him offer IT diagnostics and repair for a share of the meager profits. His CEO mind, accustomed to optimizing global logistics, quickly fixed the stubborn network issue that had plagued the business for months. Soon, a small queue formed, people needing their phones unlocked, documents typed, or simple coding problems solved. For the first time, he was earning his keep using his actual skills, not just brute labor. It was while working here that he first saw Ada. She came in to print hundreds of crudely designed flyers advertising a community health day and was arguing passionately with the owner over the cost. She was dressed simply, but her energy and vibrant conviction cut through the dull, oppressive atmosphere of the shop. She didn't have enough money, but she refused to compromise the number of flyers, arguing they were for the impoverished and malaria-ridden community of Makoko, a floating slum not far from the cyber cafe. Emeka watched as she offered to pay the balance next week, leaving her old, cherished bicycle as collateral. The owner scoffed, but Ada's eyes, fierce and honest, held his until he reluctantly agreed. Intrigued by her dedication and the sheer audacity of her collateral, Emeka felt a pull, a genuine curiosity that went beyond his sociological experiment. He knew instantly that his 7 days had just found a purpose far greater than winning a vintage car.
Emeka spent the next hour discreetly watching Ada. He finished his repair work quickly, earned just enough commission to reclaim her bicycle for her, and followed her at a distance. He tracked her to the bustling, ramshackle heart of Makoko, where she was immediately surrounded by grateful children and elderly residents. Her project, he learnt, wasn't a government or NGO initiative. It was a tiny, self-funded community clinic named Hope Anchor, housed in a repurposed leaky canoe shed. Later that evening, he approached her, pretending to be a recent arrival looking for work. "I heard you need strong hands for your clinic project," he said, hoping his CEO voice didn't betray him. Ada, tired but friendly, introduced herself. Her laughter was infectious, a sharp contrast to the gloom of the slum. She explained her mission, providing basic medical care, malaria testing, and essential hygiene lessons, all run on donations and sheer willpower. "We don't get much help from the outside," she admitted, tying back her hair with a faded scarf. "The official foundations, they send us forms, not doctors." Her comment struck Emeka like a physical blow. His own philanthropic foundation, the Okoro Charity Initiative, OCI, was supposed to be serving places exactly like this. Yet here was Ada fighting the good fight with practically nothing, while his multi-million naira organization was nowhere to be seen. A cold dread, the beginning of the scandalous twist, settled over him. He knew his challenge had just pivoted from a personal trial to a deeply uncomfortable investigation into his own legacy.
Working alongside Ada was a masterclass in integrity. Emeka, who had spent a decade navigating the morally grey waters of corporate mergers, watched in awe as she meticulously accounted for every packet of paracetamol and every bandage. No penny was misplaced, no donation, however small, was taken for granted. He, Broke Emeka, was now carrying supplies, mixing sanitation solutions, and entertaining crying children while she administered injections. The smell of antiseptic and the clamor of the vibrant yet suffering community replaced the sterile quiet of his executive office. This was real, tangible value creation, far removed from the abstract metrics of his quarterly reports. One afternoon, a wealthy-looking man, a local contractor named Chief Titus, stopped by and offered Ada a large sum of cash, demanding she prioritize his family's health issues over the queue of poorer residents. Ada firmly refused. "Everyone is equal in this clinic, Chief," she stated, her voice steady. "You will wait your turn, or you can find a private hospital." The chief stormed off, swearing he'd make things difficult for her. Emeka was surprised. He would have, without a second thought, accepted the cash for the clinic and dealt with the fallout later. Ada's refusal, however, highlighted her unwavering moral compass. This was the moment Emeka truly respected her, realizing her principles were non-negotiable, a trait rarely seen in the gilded circles he inhabited. He realized this kind of honesty was what his own foundation, OCI, needed most, a thought that brought the dread back, heavier this time. The nagging inconsistency of his own foundation's non-presence became unbearable. Ada's comment, "They send us forms, not doctors," kept echoing in his mind. He spent his commission from the cyber cafe not on better food, but on internet time. Huddled over a cheap public phone's hotspot, Emeka, the master architect of Nigeria's digital future, was forced to use public search engines to investigate his own private organization, the OCI. He searched for records of grants assigned to the Makoko area. What he found was shocking. The first juicy piece of the plot twist. Official OCI documents showed a substantial multi-million naira grant allocated 3 months ago for a Makoko floating clinic and hygiene initiative. The money had been disbursed. Where was the clinic? Where were the funds? The documents listed a local implementing partner, a little-known consultancy firm called Bridgehead Solutions. Emeka's blood ran cold. Bridgehead was an entity he vaguely remembered his chief financial officer, Kalu, insisting on using for local expertise. Kalu, his trusted second-in-command for 15 years, had handled the entire charitable portfolio. Emeka had signed off on the paperwork, too preoccupied with his global mergers to scrutinize the details. The realization that he might be a victim of massive internal financial fraud and that this bet had inadvertently placed him at the scene of the crime was a stunning, scandalous reality. He printed the documents, carefully folding them and hiding them in the sole of his worn shoe. He needed to find out who ran Bridgehead Solutions and why Makoko had never seen a naira of their promised fortune. Emeka, now more investigator than billionaire, decided to physically visit the address listed for Bridgehead Solutions in the OCI documents. It led him not to a gleaming corporate office, but to a dusty, locked warehouse far from the city center, exactly the kind of shell operation he had been warned against in business school. As he discreetly took pictures with the cyber cafe owner's cheap phone, a sleek black SUV, entirely out of place in the industrial area, pulled up. A man in a crisp shirt and sunglasses stepped out. Emeka instantly recognized him, Chinedu, Kalu's personal driver, a man who had often driven him during late-night meetings. Chinedu's eyes widened slightly when they met Emeka's.
Though Emeka was severely disguised, Chinedu, having spent years observing his boss, possessed an uncanny sense for the Okoro profile. He started walking towards Emeka, his hand moving nervously to his jacket pocket. Emeka immediately turned and bolted, disappearing into the maze of nearby stalls. Chinedu shouted, "Stop him! That's the one Kalu said was snooping." The realization hit Emeka like a punch. Kalu knew someone was investigating, likely because Emeka had been running strange queries on the OCI database from the cyber cafe, leaving a digital breadcrumb. The bet was no longer a game, it was a deadly risk. He had to get back to Makoko, the only place he felt safe, and figure out his next move. The revelation of Kalu's betrayal was the juicy truth that would rewrite his company's history.
Emeka reached the fringes of Makoko, breathless and panicked. The floating slum, which he had initially viewed as a curiosity, now felt like a sanctuary, its dense, confusing pathways a natural defense against the sleek corporate menace that haunted him. He found Ada at the clinic, teaching the group of women about boiling water. He couldn't risk telling her anything, knowing it would put her in immediate danger. He excused himself, claiming an urgent errand, and decided to hide near the waterfront until nightfall. However, Chinedu and a second larger man had been tracking his cheap phone signal and quickly closed in. They cornered him near a quiet, muddy stretch of the water. "Dr. Okoro," Chinedu sneered, the name tasting like ash in his mouth. "Kalu sends his regards. He said you are asking questions you shouldn't be, especially about Bridgehead and the missing Makoko funds." The second man pulled a small, wicked-looking iron bar from under his shorts. Emeka knew he couldn't fight them. His years of boardroom training were useless here. The scandalous truth was out in the open. Kalu, his loyal CFO, was not only stealing from the poor, but was now trying to silence the company owner to cover his tracks. As the second man raised the bar, Emeka braced for the impact, cursing the day he had agreed to that ridiculous, eye-opening bet. He closed his eyes, thinking of Ada and her pure heart, the true lust of what his money was supposed to achieve.
Just as the iron bar began its downward arc, a piercing, authoritative voice cut through the air. "Stop! What in God's name is going on here?" Ada, having followed Emeka out of concern, emerged from the winding path holding a thick, discarded piece of wood, a makeshift club that she used for clearing debris. The two thugs froze momentarily, startled by the unexpected confrontation. "Leave him alone. He is an honest man trying to help our community," Ada shouted, stepping directly between Emeka and his attackers, completely unaware she was defending one of Nigeria's wealthiest men. Chinedu laughed, a dry, unpleasant sound. "Mind your business, woman. This is private company property." Ada didn't flinch. "There is no private company here, only people trying to survive. If you want trouble in Makoko, you will have to go through all of us." Her shout had attracted the attention of a few market women nearby, who began to emerge, holding their own improvised weapons. Faced with the sudden unified resistance of the community, Chinedu, ever the corporate errand boy, realized the situation was rapidly becoming messy and attracting too much local attention. He spat on the ground. "This isn't over, Emeka," he hissed, emphasizing the common name with contempt. They retreated quickly back towards their SUV. Emeka watched them go, shaken to his core, saved by the very poverty he had sought to observe, shielded by the woman he had only just met.
Back at the Hopanko clinic, Ada cleaned a minor graze on Emeka's forehead. Her hands were gentle yet calloused from hard work. Emeka felt an overwhelming surge of guilt and affection. He knew he had to end the deception. As she treated him, she noticed the tightly folded papers tucked into the sole of his shoe, which had come loose during the scuffle. "What are these?" she asked, pulling out the OCI grant documents and the Bridgehead Solutions printout.
Emeka had no choice but to start weaving the truth, carefully omitting his real identity for the time being. They proved that 2 dangerous men I used to work for stole money meant for a clinic here, he admitted, his voice low. Ada's eyes scanned the documents. Suddenly, she stopped, pointing a trembling finger at the Bridgehead Solutions registration form. This name, Taiwo Kalu, that's my brother. The words hung in the humid air, the ultimate scandalous plot twist. Emeka stared, shocked. Your brother? Ada nodded, her face crumbling. Taiwo used to work for a big city company. He was a good man, but a year ago, his boss framed him for a huge financial loss and he went to prison. He lost everything. He kept saying his boss was a cruel rich man. Emeka's mind raced, connecting the dots. Kalu, the CFO, had an identical name to Ada's brother, Taiwo Kalu, who was framed. This had to be more than a coincidence. The CFO must have framed his namesake brother to make the fraud look less suspicious, a deliciously cruel corporate maneuver.
The moment was agonizingly tense. Emeka took a deep breath. Ada, he said, pulling out the cheap rubber wristband, the man you saved, he isn't broke, Emeka. My name is Emeka Okoro. I am the CEO of Okoro Tech and the owner of the Okoro Charity Initiative. Ada recoiled, her hand instinctively going to her mouth, the papers falling to the muddy floor. Disbelief warred with anger in her eyes. You played a game? She whispered, heartbroken. Emeka quickly countered, his voice earnest. It started as a game, Ada, a foolish bet, but it became an investigation. I believe the man who framed your brother, Taiwo Kalu, is not your brother, but my chief financial officer, Kalu Ezenwa. The name is a cruel coincidence, or maybe Kalu used the disgrace of a poor namesake to cover his tracks. He pointed to the grant. Kalu Ezenwa set up Bridgehead Solutions and stole the Makoko funds. The men who attacked me were Kalu's security team sent to silence me before I won the bet and returned to my office to find the evidence. He explained that the initial bet was a cover. The true shock he learned was the depth of betrayal within his own trusted circle and the suffering it caused. He pulled the OCI documents closer. Your courage today, Ada, your honesty, it saved not just my life, but my company. The funds you are searching for are real, and now I know exactly who took them.
Ada's initial shock morphed into a grim resolve. The betrayal of the stolen funds was personal, a cruel twist that hurts more than the hardship itself. Emeka knew he couldn't leave her in doubt. He carefully used the cyber cafe owner's ancient desktop computer, setting up a secure encrypted link, a skill his disguise hadn't required him to forget. He sent the photos of the Bridgehead warehouse, the OCI documents, and the time-stamped location of the attack, along with a concise, scathing report directly to his most trusted internal audit team member, bypassing Kalu entirely. The instructions were simple. Execute immediate audit freeze on all OCI accounts. Kalu Ezenwa is compromised. Secure all company vehicles and assets. Do not notify him. Within an hour, the digital wheels of justice began to turn. Emeka, still in his rags, watched the news feed on the local cafe's small TV screen. A sensational, carefully worded flash report about an unprecedented internal fraud investigation at Okoro Tech involving senior management and a major charitable initiative. The scandalous downfall of his CFO was underway, orchestrated from a rickety table in a cyber cafe. Ada watched him, realizing the immense power he still wielded even while living like a pauper. The bet was won. The vintage cars were safe, but the victory felt hollow. He realized that the real prize was standing right in front of him, defending her small, honest clinic. Emeka's first priority, before returning to his life, was correcting the injustice. He spent the next day coordinating with his legal team, providing evidence that Kalu Ezenwa had used the framed Taiwo Kalu's identity as a scapegoat. The lawyers moved swiftly, and within hours, Taiwo's case was flagged for immediate review. Emeka promised Ada that her brother would be free and fully exonerated, his name cleared, and his life restored, along with significant compensation for the injustice. Ada wept, not tears of relief, but of profound gratitude that someone with power finally saw her family's truth. The final piece of the puzzle was Makoko. Standing in the tiny, stifling canoe shed, Emeka drafted an executive order that superseded all former OCI initiatives. "This is not a donation," Emeka told her, gesturing around the cramped clinic. "This is an investment in honesty." He formally transferred the full amount of the fraudulently seized grant, 300 million naira, plus a matching amount from his own personal funds directly into a new, independently managed trust named the Ada Foundation, dedicated solely to health and education in Makoko. He made Ada the sole executive director, giving her complete autonomy and the financial muscle she desperately needed. The former billionaire who went broke for a week was about to make a spectacular return, but his heart and his priorities were permanently anchored in Makoko. On the morning of the 7th day, the final hour of the bet, a simple, nondescript speedboat, not his yacht, but a borrowed civilian craft, arrived to retrieve Emeka. He was clean-shaven, having borrowed a razor, but still wore the threadbare polo shirt, a permanent reminder. He stood before Ada one last time. "I have to leave now," he said gently. "The world is waiting, and I have a foundation to overhaul." Ada smiled, no longer angry, but empowered. She was holding the bank statement for the newly established Ada Foundation. The numbers almost unbelievable. "What did you really learn, Emeka?" she asked, her eyes searching his. Emeka didn't hesitate. "I learned that in the pursuit of billions, I lost sight of what a single honest naira can achieve. I learned that the poverty I thought I was observing was actually protecting a strength, your strength, that my wealth made me too weak to possess. The biggest shock wasn't the theft. It was realizing that I, the billionaire, was completely helpless, and you, the woman with nothing, had the true power to save me." As he stepped onto the boat, he made one final promise: "I will ensure justice for Taiwo, and Makoko will have the best clinic in Lagos." The boat sped away, leaving Ada, the new face of ethical philanthropy, standing tall amid the bustling market. Emeka Okoro returned to his empire, a richer man, not in currency, but in the truth Ada's pure heart had forced him to see. The moral of the story is that true value and genuine leadership are not found in affluence or status, but in moral integrity and human connection. Dr. Emeka Okoro, the wealthy CEO, had to sacrifice his entire identity and endure the humiliation of poverty to discover the catastrophic fraud hidden within his own corporate structure. His blindness was a product of his detachment from the community he purported to serve. The story highlights that the greatest virtue, unwavering integrity, was found not in his luxurious boardroom, but in the resilience and pure heart of Ada, the community leader. Her courage and the solidarity of the poor community saved him from both financial ruin and physical harm, proving that moral capital can be a greater defense than any wealth or security force. In the end, Emeka's transformation and redemption came from realizing that wealth is only meaningful when it serves a moral purpose, leading him to choose justice and ethical service over corporate comforts. We truly hope you enjoyed this story. We would love to hear your thoughts. Please share what you learned in the comment section. We read every single one. Guess what? Another powerful and inspiring story is coming just a few days. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you will be the first to watch. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and share with family and friends. Thank you so much for watching.